Alright, so I left off, we just created the frame that's going to go around our image before we go, right? So we've created the overall image, we've set up our drawing in our workspace. We've gone ahead and we've created this frame that you can see is just basically a white box at this point. But I want to make sure that I don't lose track of this. And so one of the things I'm going to do is if you double click on the name over here in the layer menu, I'm going to go ahead and just label this as frame. The other thing that I'm going to do real quick is if you right click on it, I can go down and I can actually color code my layer so that you can see that I now have a red layer named frame that I'm always going to want to sit on the top. So the next thing I want to do is that I want to go ahead and start by building the background. And so I went out online and I found this image. And so what I'm going to do with this image is that I'm going to steal the trees. I mean, there's no other way around to it. But the way that I'm going to do it is actually very intentional. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab panels. And what I mean by that is you see I'm pulling out a rectangle and I don't want any of the ground plane. I just want the trees themselves. And that's awfully heavy. So I think I'm going to select my first one about like that. And then I'm going to copy this, so Control C. And then I'm going to go back to my other drawing and I'm going to make sure I move down here below the frame and I'm going to add Control V. And you see that it drops in and it's really, really small. Well, I don't want that. And so I'm going to go ahead and use the free transform. So under Edit, Free Transform, I'm going to hold the Shift key. I'm going to drag this out. I want it to, the background on the final image, I want it to be about half. And you see, since it's sitting underneath that frame, you can see that it hides. Now, if it were sitting on top of that frame, obviously it would go to the top of the drawing. But if I go ahead and just make sure I move it back there, like that. Now the other thing that I'm going to want to do here is that this is the background, and I want this to be pretty light. I don't want it to overwhelm the image, and so I'm actually going to drop this first one back to about, maybe we'll go even a little bit further. So I'm going to change the opacity to about 70% just to make it a real light background layer. Next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy this. Now I could go over here and I could duplicate my layer. It says duplicate layer, and I could copy it that way. Or using my marquee tool, I can just hold the Alt key down and you can see that I could pull out a copy. Now, if I were just to, real quick, let's see here. If I were just to do this and drop these all out, one after the other, you'd see this would just get really repetitive and it would look terrible in the end. And so I don't want to do that. What I do want to do, I'm going to move back in my history menu, is now that I've got this copy, what I'd like to do with the copy is I would like to flip it, right? Let's manipulate it a little bit. And so what I'm going to mean by flip is I go to Edit, I go to Transform. Hang on a sec, I'm on the wrong one. Under Edit, Transform, and I want to flip horizontal. And you see that now what that's done is it's now moved that image to the... And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one up a little bit. I think that's what I want to do, right? And so it's just not a perfect match, and then I'm going to move it over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to my background trees, and I'm going to grab that same marquee tool. I'm going to move it around somewhere else and grab another snapshot out of this image, about like that. Control C, Control V. You can see I'm going to go ahead and size it again. This one I'm going to make a little bit taller just to change it around. Again, I think this one I'm going to set it even a little bit lighter. 50% is maybe a bit much. 60, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and move it maybe so it lines up about like that, and create a copy, and I'm going to shove the copy all the way over here in the corner, but again, not line up the bottom so that it doesn't look exactly like I've copied something. Maybe I even go ahead and bring that over the top of that one a little bit so we get a little overlap. Do that one more time, right? And you can see this process. I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to make them a little bit different size. I'm going to stagger the bottom edge, and somewhere in this process, I'm going to go ahead and create a composite that looks something like this. And this is just a series of those kind of laid in on top of one another, images grabbed, flipped from the other copy of the image, right? And to be honest, this is about all I need to do for the background here. And so I've actually been able to complete this. Before you move on, what I would suggest doing is label these as background 1, background 2, and you can change the colors on these. So maybe set all of these to orange so that they're all showing. You can see I actually have all of mine grouped here in a folder. Don't worry about that. It's the same process. I'm just trying to keep my drawing more organized. I can actually then go ahead and color code the folder, and I can actually label it background. Not necessary, but you can do it that way. And I'm going to go ahead and stop, and we'll pick up on the next